Hi everyone, I am here with Ed Chan. Glad to see him again. He just got back from his 2 month amazing vacation that he gets to do because he owns his firm, but he basically got to bike around fantastic landscapes in Europe for 2 months with his wife, with his family, got to see friends. So he's coming back refreshed to talk to us about some of the burning topics that our members have been asking about. So, yeah, very excited to dig in with you, Ed. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for
Hap-
having me, Claudia. Yeah.
yes, happy to hear that. Thank you. So yeah, some of the questions that we've gathered, as always, come from careers that we have and ideas that our mentors and members have about certain topics. So I'm going to ask a few and see how you would tackle them. In a flat and shallow team structure, they will wonder what's going on because communication traffic is not streamlined. So they will wonder like, where's this person most of the time when we are all working? Um,
Yes.
and yeah, that's I feel like one of the things that our members are probably, thinking about how to handle if that happens. But hopefully they can get to fixing, their leadership and their team design.
Uh, I've got an actual good tip for someone to help them delegate
Love
because there
that.
is a
Shoot it.
difference. Yes, there's a difference between abdication and delegation, and most of us abdicate, not delegate. And part of the problem is that it's all, of course, to do with our mindset and the way we think. And you know, our thinking, because we've grown up, out of university and then working from a grinding perspective. We got taught how to do the work. So the grinding, minding, and finding. And a grinder is about getting it done quickly. So often you're at the back of your mind, you're saying, well, it's quicker if I just do it. Okay. It's by the time I train someone, I could have got it done. Okay. So I call that the thinking in the P&L instead of thinking in the balance sheet, in investing in your balance sheet, you're thinking in a P&L, just quick and efficiently get it done. So it's done quickly, it's efficient, you make money out of it. That's the P&L thinking. But you've got to get the balance right between a P&L thinking and a balance sheet thinking. Because if you don't invest, and our clients are accountants, and they all know if they don't invest, they advise their clients you've got to invest. If
Yeah.
you don't invest, you won't get a dividend, or you won't get a benefit later on if you don't invest. So you've got to invest. You've got to get the balance right between, yes, the P&L to make money, to get cash flow through the door, but you've got to spend a certain amount of time to investing in your team. And if you get that balance right, then it's both profitable and it's sustainable. But if you don't get that balance right, and you're either too far in the P&L, you'll just do all the work yourself, and then you won't be able to grow the business. You'll because you just can't do everything. There's only so many hours in a day, and um, and so if you get that balance right, if you put some into the P&L and some into the balance sheet. Now, to help the audience do this, I use the 80-20 rule. And so you know that the way I look at it is I never do something from start to finish. That means that I'm doing 100% of it. I only do the last 20% of it. So I always get somebody else to do 80% of it. So either to do the grinding and then I just check it at the end, all right? Now, if I do something from start to finish, that I'm not delegating. Now, a couple of things happens when you do that. One is you're the most expensive person in the organization. So you're doing very low level, sometimes very low level work at a very high cost to your organization, right? Secondly is you're not investing in your balance sheet. So you're not educating your staff how to do this. And if you don't educate your staff and train them on how to do it, then you'll do it forever, and then you'll become a prisoner in your own business. Not only will you become a prisoner in your own business,
Yeah.
but you can't you can't get a return on the cost because you're the most expensive person in your organization, and you're doing very, very low level work, and that's just not efficient and it's not cost effective. So the way I try to get around it is I make sure that I don't do anything from start to finish. So I get somebody else to do pretty much 99% of what I do. I delegate it to somebody else to do, and then I check it or I follow up and train. I spend my time training that person on how to do it. And yes, if you're focused on the P&L, then you're going to be thinking, oh, this is just a waste of time. It's quick if I just did it. And by the time I train that person, then, I could have just got it done. So it comes back to the way you think. So you've got to think long term. You've got to think investing in my balance sheet and not just working the P&L. So I always use 20%. I only do 20%. If I'm doing more than the 20%, then I'm not delegating.
I have a follow-up question in regards to this because I find it very interesting, and I'm sure that someone has probably had this issue before. Because you've previously said in what you answered just now that when someone is doing a task and you want to, just put 20% of that because you want to make sure that the delegation is working.
Mhm.
What do you do, or what's the point to know that probably this person is not skilled for this position because you've trained them enough and they haven't, giving the results that you were expected to? Like, what's your thermometer in that situation?
Well, you've got to know your staff. So I wouldn't give a high level task to a graduate or someone without any experience.
Yeah,
So
of
if
course.
I Yeah, so you've got to know your team and you've got to know their skill level. And I take the opportunity to train them. So you got to, before you delegate, you've got to make sure A, the person can do it, B, they're very clear about your instructions, and C, they need training. So if they can't do it, you need to spend the time to train. So when you just throw something at somebody and walk away, that's abdication, right? That outcome's going to be inconsistent. They'll come back either pretty good, you'll come back, average, or you come back really bad. It's because you've just abdicated that. So if I delegated something, a task to someone that's not experienced in it, I give them lots of training and then I follow up constantly. So I'm following
Yeah.
up and I'm checking on them, making sure that they're on the right track. Now that's when I was working in the practice. Today, I only work on areas of training. So, like today, I'm training. I'm training the people who's listening to this session. So I don't do any tasks that are grinding. It's all educational and it's training, and that brings a lot more. That's investment. That's investing in my business, in the people that I'm working with, and in our clients. That's investing in them. So when you get to my level, eventually you should be thinking, you shouldn't even be doing the last 20%. So 100% of what you're doing should be just training and educating.
That's amazing. I have a question that is related to all of this. Um, when you have your first staff, there are lots of our members who are, getting their first staff, their admin assistant, and they are, jam-packed with work.
Mhm.
Do they need to put more hours out of their already grinding work that they have to train this new person?
Yes, they have to. And I know it's like, oh, I just haven't, I've just got so much work to do, and where am I going to find the time to do this? But you have to find that time,
Yeah.
whether it's working on a Sunday, but you'll find that if you do that, if you find a few hours to do the training, then eventually your workload actually drops. So when I first started, I was working over 100 hours a week. And I was in a position where I was going, well, where am I going to get another hour to train this person? But I found it, and then what I did find was that the more I train them, the more of the work they can take off my plate, and then my workload started to come down. So it is difficult, but it's got to start with your mindset. If you don't think the right way, then this will never happen. You'll constantly make excuses. You'll say, "I don't have time." Where do I have time from? And by the time I train them, and then they leave. I spend all this time training them, and then they leave. So you'll constantly make excuses for not doing it, and you won't do it. But you got to trust me on this one. The more you train the person, the more they can take the workload off of you, and the workload actually comes down, and then you can scale from there. But if you don't, and you just stay in your P&L and not invest in your balance sheet, all right, your workload just goes higher and higher and higher, and you can't, and you'll face burnout, and then you'll end up hating your clients, hating your life, and being very depressed and cranky. Right. That's what I was thinking.
Ultimately, yes. Yes, and we all want
So,
to steer away from that and build a practice that you
yes.
enjoy and that you love and that you can, withdraw from, but still being a key element in growth. Like that's what every firm owner should look up to. I have one final request for you, Ed, and it's because we love your Friday tips. We love your tips in general. What's out of all of this questions I've asked you related to, delegation and that shift that firm owners have to make in order to adhere to all of these because it's uncomfortable for them to, make this first change. What's one advice you would give to these people who are on that cusp of making that change but not so sure to do so?
You've got to, well, as I said earlier, you've got to invest, and that investment is in people. And whether initially it's got to be a financial investment, okay, it's because often as accountants, you think, well, I can save some money if I do it myself. That's
Yeah.
the wrong way to think. Yeah. So you've got to make that investment. And yes, if you see it as an expense, then that's a problem. But if you see it as an investment, then that's easier to deal with it. And the question then is, do you invest in an admin person first, or do you invest in a experienced accountant, or do you invest in a junior accountant? Because if you invest in a junior accountant, it's going to require a lot of your work to train that person. So the answer to that question just depends on the individual circumstances.
Yeah.
And everybody's different. So if you were getting a lot of leads and a lot of new works coming through, then you can't afford to hire a junior. You have to hire a senior person to take some of that workload off you so that you can breathe. You can then spend some time on developing policies, training, that kind of thing. But if you bring in a junior and there's a lot of new work coming through the door, then you're not going to be able to find the time to train that junior. That junior won't be trained, and all the work will be done wrong, and then you'll have to fix all that work up, and it's counterproductive, and you end up doing
Mm.
most of the work. Yes, hiring an experienced person will cost you more, but it's going to be a lot more productive. You're going to get a lot more out the door, and they'll give you the breathing space to eventually then hire a junior person when this senior person can train that junior person. So it really depends on where you are in your life cycle. If you're not getting any new work coming through and it's just the existing work that's really, really busy, well,
Mm.
you can afford to perhaps put on a junior and then find the extra time to train that junior. All right. So it just depends on your circumstances as which one you do first. But of course, you always hire an admin person first because that's the low level work that you need to get done. And because your cost to your organization is very high. And if you did low level admin work, then you're costing your organization a lot of money. Whereas that's the first port that you're going to go to, hire a admin person to take off you all the low level admin work and at a cost effective expense to the organization. And then that frees your time up. But for a lot of accountants, they're very, very reluctant to hire because they see it as a cost as an expense and not as an investment, and
Mm.
that's a mistake. Um, so you need to do that, and the risk isn't that high because you put them on 3 months, and if it doesn't work out, you let them go, and it's only cost you 3 months. It's not a whole year's salary. It's just a 3 or 2 months or 3 months, and that's all it's costing you. But it's just the way you think about it, and you won't be able to grow, and you won't your business will consume you, and that's not good for you, nor for your family, and nor for your business for that matter, nor for your staff because you're just cranky all the time, and nobody wants to work with you.
I
Uh,
love that. Coming from a very happy person nowadays, who I find it very hard to believe you were a cranky person at any point in your life. I don't see that happening. But yeah, I would take your advice by heart, and I love what you said, that bottom line is invest either money or time. But if you want your business to stay afloat and to go up, you basically have to invest somehow.
yes.
Thank you so much, Ed, for pouring your thoughts into our conversation today. This was amazing. As always, great pleasure having you, sharing your wisdom and answering burning questions from who listens to us. And I would say to everyone to stay tuned. We're going to have even more content, even more wisdom on our episodes. So, yes, thank you so much, Ed.
All right. No, thank you for having me, and look forward to the next one.
Yes, thank you.